Today I want to talk about different ways I access for a morning time hunt and whether I use a light or a white light, green light, red light, if there's one that doesn't spook deer. I'm just going to talk about different things I prefer because it's probably the most asked question is how I access for a morning hunt with a light without spooking deer. So we're going to get into it a little bit. It's actually not something I've gave a whole lot of thought to as far as the color of a light, whether deer aren't afraid of green light or red light, because I don't want a deer I'm hunting to see any light. I don't. I think whether it's green, red, yellow, pink, or purple, a deer is gonna associate it with a human and with a threat. So I don't want a deer to see any light. But with that being said, I just use a white light. Um, some places I go in a deep, more a swamp that normally holds a lot of water, whether it has water in it at the time or not. It's real easy to lose your bearings in the dark because everything just looks the same. Um, so places like that where I'm going a mile or a couple miles or something through a swamp, most times I'll have when I scouted it or if I previously hunted or something, I have the best access. That's one of the access is the probably the biggest thing I look at. So I have a track saved on my phone, to where I can use my phone and basically know where to put my feet. But with that being said, in gun season, I'm still using a light for safety. I'm always going to use a light in gun season, but I've planned out my access to where I'm not walking where I think the deer will be at the time I'm walking in. Or a lot of times I'll look at the feed times because I really don't want to spook any deer. So if it's a major feed an hour before daylight or something like that, then I'm gonna have to be really careful. Not necessarily for spooking the bucks, but the does will be up feeding on the major. Um, and that may be a situation where I'll wait till after daylight and come in, or hunt a little different spot and then move in something in order to know where the deer are at a certain time. And this is geared more towards early season or maybe even late season in some areas, but the deer are kind of patternable. Bucks are kind of patternable early season, so they're splitting up and maybe ranging a little bit farther than they were, 2 weeks ago. But they're not out just going 2, 3, 4, 5 miles a night searching for does yet. So I kind of have a good idea where the deer be, and then access. If I'm hunting say I'm hunting the edge of a swamp or something, nasty swamp. Well, the deer they lay out in little thickets in the swamp or something. But at night they come up on the hill and they're out feeding whatever they're gonna do. But a lot of times the deer will have night beds out there where they're feeding and hanging out and out of the mosquitoes and enjoying the breeze or whatever. And so I'm gonna access by I'll get it maybe if I'm walking, say I have to walk in or not have to, but I'm walking in the transition line, so I'm not out in the water or whatever. Well, I'll get to a certain point to where I know the deer I'm gonna be hunting could possibly be up here. There might be times where I bail off in the water and I'm walking waist deep for 400 or 500 yards or whatever I need to do to come up on the backside where the deer are over here, and then I catch them coming back in. So as far as what light I use not to spook deer, it's not really anything that crosses my mind. I don't want deer to know I'm there. Um, Now if you're pre-rut bucks are traveling on their feet, roaming all night long, not really having night beds. um, and you really can't know where they're at say 5 a.m. when I'm walking in. Um, then it gets a little tricky. I'm just gonna try to avoid areas best I can of maybe buck sign or where I know I've had a camera and they hang out, or I'm just gonna try to avoid those areas by staying over in the swamp or staying over in a slough, or whatever has to be done depending on the terrain. In some areas I won't hunt in the morning because I can't access it without spooking deer. There's a deer. I didn't realize I was making a mistake last year. There was a big buck I was hunting, and I would wait on the right conditions. What I thought was the right conditions. I'd only been in there really one time, and I hadn't looked at all of it because I didn't want to stink it up. It was too late in the year. Season was about to start, so I didn't want to stink it up. But I knew the buck was laying. A lot of times he was laying off the end of a island. But what I didn't know is there was a off the end of the island there was kind of a slough and then a thick place. And I actually thought he was using a smaller thick place on the edge of the slough. I didn't know the other thick area was even there. I thought it was all open swamp. So I think I went in there 2 days, 2 mornings, and I when I originally went in, I hung a cell camera. So I mean, this camera is the most active camera I had all year, and it was way out on an island. But it was hard to hunt. But anyway, the camera will be going crazy basically all day, all night. Different bucks. There was probably 5 or 6 shooters on that camera, and by shooters I mean 115 to 125 inch bucks. Uh, 5, 6 year olds. Um, a lot of younger bucks, but they weren't as active. I think the big bucks were kind of keeping them pushed out. But anyway, I would wait on the right conditions and thought I had the perfect access where I would catch a wind out of the northwest, and I would swing way around to the south and come on there and thinking, when a deer gets up, he's gonna probably come out to the point of the island or something, and I just enough to get a shot. This was in gun season, and I think I went back anyway. I would never see the deer. I would leave. I would hunt, and it would be the only morning where I wasn't having big bucks on camera, and I couldn't. I knew I was doing something wrong because it would be to the point where I would leave, and like 30 minutes later, he's standing in front of the camera. So I'm like, this deer's seeing me. He smells me. He's hearing me. Something's going on. So when season closed, I went back in there. It was during small game, but I went back in there and I don't know, maybe a week, 2 weeks after season closed. It was probably February. Um, and just checked the sign, looked at where I thought he was bedding, and as soon as I looked at it, I was like, "Ooh, I was off a little bit. Something's not right." And and looked around, and I found where the bucks. It was obvious where the bucks were bedding. There was rubs like this in the big beds, and it was just surrounded by a tangle, like it was perfect. So now I know that for this year, and I think I can make it work. But the access, how I'm gonna have to access this place is basically a half a mile, just say a half a mile east of it. I'm gonna have to go by it almost a half a mile and come up from the south. It's gonna be tough, but um doubling or tripling, probably tripling my walk in. It's gonna take me. I'm gonna say it's gonna take me close to 3 hours from the time I leave the truck to the time I can set up on this deer. So I mean, I'm gonna be leaving the truck. If I do a morning hunt, I'm gonna be leaving the truck at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning to get in there and hunt this deer. But I'm looking forward to it. I think the best answer I can give for the question of the light, to use light or not, whatever. Um, Gun season, I'm gonna say use the light for safety purposes. I'm going to. Um, I've seen too many. too many people that don't belong in the woods Archery season, um, obviously there's going to be a lot of times where I have to use the light because if not, I just can't keep my bearings where I'm at. If I can get away with, if I'm hunting a place where I don't need a light in order to keep my bearings, then I'm not going to use a light. But I've taken guys with me before on some of these 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mile trips and take off walking in the dark, and 10 minutes in they're completely turned around, don't have a clue where we're going, and I'm just looking at, like, I navigate by um remembering or recognizing different things. I mean, it may be a broke tree limb 30 foot in the air, it may be a tree that has a funny fork, or like all these things every 100 yards, or every so often I have some kind of landmark that keeps me on course. So the only time I need a good light is to recognize those things, and but if I was gonna go, say, where I'm wanting to hunt is 2 miles from the truck, the first mile I might carry a bright spotlight, what, any kind of light, just a big light so I can travel fast and keep my bearings. But as I get closer and get to where the deer could possibly be, or start getting close enough to spook a deer, then I'll drop down to a headlight, and I don't wear it on my head. I'll have a headlight or a small flashlight or something, and I'll hold it in my hand and just let the light come through the crack of my fingers enough to get my feet through there without tripping over Cypress knees and hurting myself. There's some, there's places I can't hunt in the morning as much as I would want to, just because I don't know. I mean, I could and have a 50% chance of spooking the deer, but I don't want to do that if I can help from it. I want to I want to catch the buck, basically unaware, have him calm. I don't want to go in there and spook it all up if I can help from it. So going back to my best answer for that question. As for, does green light or red light spook deer as bad as white light? Studies show it doesn't. I have no idea. Either way, I don't want the deer seeing light, so the color of my light does not affect my thought process for how I access. I find an access where I'm not spooking the deer. If I don't know where the deer are at the time I'm accessing, I don't hunt it. If that makes sense. I mean, I could always be wrong. It's an animal. He could be wherever he wants to be. But I'm setting myself up for the best possible chance of success that I can. So spooking deer is not going to increase my odds. So I want to know how the deer come out of the bedding area. How that where they are at night. So I may waste cameras by hanging them up where the deer are at night. So, and I've done that several times with success, as hang cameras up where I think they'll be when I'm accessing. So when them cameras are going off, I know he's up there and I'm going down here, and I'm set up to catch him coming back into his bed. So I really don't. I'm gonna say the only time I hang cameras where I'm hunting is if I'm. Well, a lot of times I'll put cameras in my bag when I'm hunting, and if I see something, ooh, I probably need to put a camera here while I'm there already, and my scent's there already, then I'll throw a camera up. But my cameras are basically out for my next year. So my cameras I have out now are basically giving me information to where I'm going to hunt next year, not this year. I'm hunting this year off of last year. I may use those cameras and just to get a better pattern on where the deer are, see where they are at night. At 5 a.m., 4 a.m. when I am accessing. A lot of times, if I have a buck, like I'm after one particular buck kind of thing, which I try not to do too much, but in those situations, I may hang four, five, six cameras around on different exits or different entries or where he's coming out of that thick area he's laying in or pond he's laying in or something like that. So I kind of know when he's out and I can get in. So I will use cameras like that occasionally, but not often. And then if I have it, I'm not saying like I'm waiting on that camera to go off over here to know he's out there, then I'm running in, which that would be an awesome scenario. But I really just want to get that pattern. Once I know, a couple nights, I've got a picture of him over here at 4 o'clock in the morning, whatever. I'm gonna assume he's on that side somewhere probably, and I'm gonna come in and try to catch him coming back in. So I hope this has answered the question. It's a tough question. I'm sure a lot of guys will have all kind of different opinions. I say different terrain would affect, uh, more open terrain, maybe fields or stuff like that would definitely affect my thinking on it. But I don't hunt those type of situations very often. So my final answer would be I just don't want deer to see a light period, no matter what color it is. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.